So here is a short presentation on our toolkit. Today, as I said earlier, this will be largely focused around a conversation that I'd like to have with all of you as well. Okay, so the purpose of our toolkit is to educate and inform advocates and organizers assisting with vaccine access and navigation. The toolkit is available in both English and Spanish. We will be updating the toolkit regularly. And these are the two links. There are two links, one for English version and one for Spanish version. The English link is tinyurl.com/do network C19 toolkit. And that's all lowercase and all run together. Again, that's tinyurl.com/do network C19 toolkit. And the Spanish version is the same, tinyurl.com/do network C19 toolkit, and then capital S and capital P. And just so everyone knows, the updates, when they're put out, they will be translated into both of these versions will be kept similar. So the overview of the sections are, the first thing that will be on the page is the list of updates. Those are coming soon. We have our first week's worth of updates that will be coming out very soon, hopefully tomorrow. Then there will be an introduction that talks about the purpose of the toolkit, why we put this together. And then our advocacy position on the COVID-19 vaccine access and the state vaccine distribution process, advocacy strategies and countering myths, resources, and finally connecting with the DO network. So the next, we're going to dive into a quick tour of the toolkit. And again, I'm going to stop with each section and take some input and feedback from all of you who are engaged in a lot of this work. So the overview, kind of high-level view of our advocacy position on COVID-19 vaccine access. Vaccines should be accessible and available to people with disabilities, especially those who are high risk, as defined by California Department of Public Health. And we also believe that individual choice is central to our advocacy work. We spent a lot of time working very diligently with the state's vaccine process and advocated for a big high-profile change that occurred on the 15th, and it will increase access for people who are high risk, who are people with disabilities of all age, age above 16, which the vaccine has been, proven, tested, and safe. So just a high-level overview of the process. Many of you have probably heard this before, but the primary access point at this point is the state-run myturn.ca.gov website. There's also a phone access to this system. Phone number is listed here. Another method that vaccines are getting out into the community are through pilot projects with Cal OES. Those are a state partnership process and usually set up with community nonprofits. Some of the independent living centers are accessing some vaccination and access that way. And then finally, there's the federal partnerships with pharmacies and physicians. That also is ramping up quite a bit. So a little in the resource section, we'll dive into how to navigate the state and the federal vaccine distribution processes. So I'm curious to hear from all of you, just to make our toolkit more robust, and admittedly, this is a very high-level view, so I understand if you've not yet had a chance to engage with our toolkit, but I'm curious we're in a very different place now than we were perhaps a month ago, but I'm curious if there are some unanswered questions about distribution. Are there barriers that you're seeing or unknowns? And I'll open that up. Feel free to ask questions. We can troubleshoot, and if we are unable to find answers, then we see that we have some advocacy work to do.
Russell, can you explain again what the distribution process means or is?
So the distribution process is the process through which vaccines get from the vial, right, into someone's arm, right? And it's complex, right? There is the state myturn.ca.gov website that you can go to and register. And when you register, it does some quick eligibility checks and lets you know if you're in a category that is eligible for vaccination now. And if that's the case, then it lets you go ahead and set up an appointment. The state has outlined some categories of folks that are eligible right now. Again, this is spelled out a lot more in detail in the toolkit, but that's method one. There is another method that you can find through pharmacies and physicians in your area. And that's the federal government just distributes those vaccines directly to those pharmacies and physicians. Whereas through this MyTurn, it's the state and the state's partner, Blue Shield, that are managing those processes. Did that answer your question? Do you still have the kind of high level overview is probably about as helpful as we can actually get, because every community is a little bit different. But the long story too is that a lot of this picture changed because originally county health departments were running so much of the conversation, and now it's the state directly.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, so a little bit about the toolkit actually talks about how the county health departments were originally in charge, and to some degree, they still are. So it's good to build those relationships with your county health department when you're wondering about vaccine access, but it's also important to know that a person's first stop should always be the MyTurn website, and also to search for pharmacies that might be giving out vaccines.
Okay, Russell Jutales, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the toolkit just now, and I did a kind of a mystery shopper experience on the MyTurn website. So that means, I'm just kind of playing with it, like I needed to sign up for a vaccine, but I don't. So I'm to the point where I answered a lot of questions, and I put in my zip code, and they gave me a couple of places to look at. And on the calendar, there's really nothing in the first two sites I checked out, but it doesn't really indicate that, when I'm looking at this calendar, there's no way to know, what's available per date and what's not. You just keep going and there's nothing. So my question is, how do we, the community, give feedback to whoever it is who is the webmaster of this site, not only in terms of 508 compliance, but ease and intuitiveness and understandability and simplicity of use?
That is an excellent question. And I think it's time that we do start looking at these smaller conversations, right? The MyTurn website is really less than, it was originally built several months ago, but the functionality of the site has really only ramped up in the past 2 weeks. So I think we're seeing a lot of these kinds of questions. One, everyone needs to realize that the number of available vaccine doses in every community varies quite a bit sometimes. And just the general way that the state is handling this, scheduling in advance, I think, is still something that they're trying to get dialed in. So that's the other thing I think that we want to add to the toolkit too, is that, understanding that the doses are limited in terms of like forecasting. They can't yet forecast very well. So checking that website on a daily basis sometimes is the process that folks have to go through. I think the usability piece, the California Vaccine Advisory Committee that is at the state level, CFILC actually has a presence on that committee. That's a great place to bring these kinds of conversations. And you can find their website on the California Department of Public Health. They meet. Right.
Russell, I wanted to touch on what June said about the website. So us personally at Skill, we experienced a lot of problems with My Turn. I know when we initially were doing calls and setting up our mobile vaccine that we had at Skill, somehow there was a glitch in the system, and there were so many people that showed up that were able to schedule an appointment through My Turn, but they were not supposed to, I guess. And so we had to let them know that there was a glitch in the system. And unfortunately, refer them back to My Turn, the website. And then another thing that I experienced was you get to a part where you have to have a phone number, I believe, to receive a text message. And some people don't have cell phones. So that was an issue as well.
Thank you for that feedback. Yes, I think all of these things that, experiences are definitely things that the advisory committee needs to hear. For example, I think a solution with that, especially with the phone-based process, is they need to be able to have not just text, but also robocalls, so that those that same information can be delivered via a regular landline. And I agree with you on that. Also, to speak to equity, couple of things. First of all, when we are helping people navigate the system, we should be helping them understand who is eligible currently, and that eligibility should still be prioritized for people who are of especially high risk, those who are in some elevated risk where COVID-19 would impact their health more severely, or their care would be interrupted, or other giant barriers would be imposed if they were to contract COVID-19. So I think unfortunately, we know that equity is a priority for the state, but it is not fully realized. And certainly a website is not going to be 100% accurate at figuring that out, right? Because people sometimes can get around it. Like, they can know what the correct maybe way to go through and answer the questions are, and still get kind of pushed through. So I would encourage us to take this, these experiences and actually put them together, and honestly share with us at, I'm going to be sharing our email address. But let's put together a working document that we can say, this is what we're seeing in our communities. We're seeing that disadvantaged communities are not getting access because the vaccinations are unavailable. It's not reasonable for some people with disabilities to be checking the website every 3 hours. That's a lot of work. So there's certainly a lot of that happening. I would tell everyone that all of this, as much as it, as much advanced work as there's been, this is still a work in progress. And I think we're seeing that we're learning as we go along, right? Okay, so I'm going to advance to the next section, which is the strategies that we recommend and kind of the way to counter some of the myths. And that's actually one area that I'd really like to hear more about, is maybe some of the vaccine hesitancy that you're hearing in your communities. Oh, Lauren had a question about mobile vaccination. I think that that's an important small conversation to have as well. Lauren, do you want to ask about the mobile vaccinations?
Yeah, so my question is, in one of the counties that we serve 3 counties, they have funding from their area agency on aging is funding from the county, and ours for SLO and Santa Barbara do not have that funding. So we're not seeing mobile vaccination delivery in 2 of our very large counties, and we're only seeing it in 1.
Yeah, I think that that's, the reality is that the counties still have a very large role to play in a lot of this work, right? So even though they're, in terms of like getting signed up for a vaccine has changed somewhat to a state and federal process, it's kind of concurrently. The counties still have so much to play. If there's transportation needs that are unmet, or, for example, the new idea of mobile vaccinations, which, the president himself has said should be a priority, nationwide. So I think the answer to those kinds of questions is build those relationships with your county departments of public health. And as much as possible, and I know it can be challenging because every county is different. Every county has different priorities, and maybe they've allocated their funding in different ways. But I would say as somebody who's at an ILC, you're kind of in a unique place where you can say, don't shame them, but say, look, your neighbors here in SLO are doing this. And this is how they, accessed this. And there is more money coming too. So the next stimulus round of funding actually allocates money for programs and delivery services of this kind. And some cities, such as San Francisco and Los Angeles, are doing large pilots of home-based vaccination.
Right. I noticed that. My other question sort of goes with something you've already touched on, and that's transportation. So we have one community-based volunteer-run organization that is doing transportation for individuals 62 and older. So that's there's a large gap. And then because it's volunteer-run, they don't have wheelchair accessibility.
Yeah, I understand. And maybe, in some cases, ILCs are also receiving CARES Act funding. And there may be some opportunity to kind of partner instead of having to kind of reinvent wheels and say, look, if you can expand this to people under, from 16 to 62, right? Fill that gap. Maybe you can kind of form a partnership there. But there's also, there's also other transportation providers sometimes, like your public transportation provider and those kinds of things. Encourage them maybe to offer free rides or, other creative solutions, because transit's kind of one of those, not a one size fits all, but maybe a many approaches suit many kind of situation, so.
Yeah, the problem with the public transportation is they won't wait with the person while they get their vaccination, and then they have an hour between schedule, like pickup and return time. So then they would have to wait at the vaccination site for an hour. So we're paying a private company to do this, and it's It's like $80. So it's a lot of our CARES Act funding.
Yeah, that's really disconcerting, and it is unfortunate that that's the current situation in some places. I know that some of the paratransit providers have actually been able to arrange for folks to receive the vaccination while still kind of in the vehicle, so it operates kind of like a drive-through. And then they do have to wait. They have to wait during the observation period, obviously, but they're not waiting for, it doesn't disrupt the system quite as much. So that might be something to kind of connect with. I don't know. It's such a complicated situation, but I'd say maybe provide some different pictures of what could work.
Yeah, I'll take your suggestions. Those are really great. So I'll talk with public health and our local SMAT.
Thanks. I also saw that June asked a very good question about gathering the experience of people who have used. Has anyone known anyone who's navigated the phone system, the 833 number? And do we have any experience stories?
Jumping in again, I can tell you I've tried to get my consumers, the power that they can register for their own appointments. And in our county, they open up new appointments at 9 a.m. on Mondays. So there just isn't any vaccine available the rest of the time. So, and they have some of them have difficulty using the phone due to hearing issues. So TTY isn't intuitive for them. So, yeah, mostly I'm helping them do appointments, and I'm setting appointments with them for Monday after 9 a.m.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Lauren, it's June. I had two questions for you. So when they call that number, is there a long wait time? Or do they have a sense of how long they have to wait?
I'm not sure because I wasn't on the phone with them at the time, and I didn't ask them. They just informed me that after they got through the phone call process that there weren't any appointments available. So sorry, I didn't have an answer for that.
And what county are you in?
I'm in Santa Barbara County.
Okay. So I'm wondering.
I'm not doing that. We don't need to do that. Get your ball. Where's your ball, Tucky? Get your ball.
Hey, Lisa. I think we're getting a little bit of background there.
Lauren, I'm wondering if the paratransit service might be of help in in LA. Some of the sites have been able to negotiate down here for access services to bring people to mega sites, go through an express lane where there's no waiting or not much waiting, have vaccines administered on the vehicle, have people wait nearby in the designated wait time, and then leave. So there's no drop off and then pick up hours later. Have you had any success, or could you, negotiate that in Santa Barbara like they've done in LA?
I'm sorry, I hit an internet lag spike there, so I missed most of your question. But I am going to follow up with our local transit and see if they can do free transportation.
Yeah, and a lot of times your transportation providers will, the public transportation provider will have a committee or subcommittee that is exclusively focused on access. So it's kind of an overview of their ADA service. And those are good places to bring these things up that, exactly as to what June said, we're seeing other providers that are willing to make, small changes, meaning that they have to coordinate really honestly with the vaccine sites, especially the mass vaccine sites, to make it work. But a little bit of coordination can go a long way toward finding solutions like that, where they're not having to actually drop people off. Even maybe they could just be there for the observation period and then move on. And try to schedule multiple people as well, right? Like,
Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's suggestions.
absolutely. And more, moreover, I know for some of you, these conversations might be new, but our Do Network organizers and advocates have a lot of experience, maybe even have pre-existing relationships with the transportation bodies. All right, I'm going to move on quickly to our next section. And many of you have probably already been completely aware of the changes that occurred on March 15th, but here is a very high level overview of that. People with high risk disabilities above the age of 16 are now eligible for vaccination. There's a variety of medical conditions that are listed in the toolkit. And then there's a really great addendum, though, at the end of the list of conditions that says that regional center clients, IHSS recipients, and even though it's not explicitly spelled out in the list, we've seen that independent living consumers are also considered eligible as of right now. The big thing being is that kind of proof or a way to justify that COVID-19 would significantly affect ongoing care services or affect the other maybe conditions that an individual might have. That's the state's look at, again, prioritizing equity, right? Those who need the vaccine the most urgently should be able to access it now. And we're seeing a lot of varying approaches to what they call certifying these things. The state has really leaned strongly at our recommendation on self-certification. So some places they'll ask, maybe for you to sign something or to certify. The My Turn website actually asks you kind of, to verify that what you're saying is true. It's a good idea to have folks be prepared to, if they're asked to sign something or to give, consent that they are telling, what they're saying is accurate. And then, of course, when possible, to bring something that is proof or if it's not too much of a burden, to bring that. And then I also have a list of myths as identified by the CDC. I keep kind of listening out and asking around about myths that we may be hearing that are unique to the disability community. And I've not yet heard fortunately, a bunch of really pervasive kind of negative myths. And I'm not terribly surprised, because when we did polling back before there were vaccines, we noticed that our community was, by and large, far more eager to get vaccinated than perhaps the non-disabled populations were. But I'm curious, have others been hearing anything that's kind of going around in their community that might be leading people to question the vaccines or any kind of hesitancy?
Russell, for me, June counts, it's been more, the focus has been more about, there's so many people still needing to get the vaccine that it's not been the priority focus at this point for, what I do. But it seems like it will be down the road, but it seems like there's so many people who want it who still can't get it. That and the more people who get it,
Mhm.
the more they seem to impact those who were hesitant before to be more open to getting it. So it's hard to focus on that part for me right now anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's actually something that's really positive about all of this, right? Is I think the more that people with disabilities share that they are getting their vaccines, it's probably honestly helping the entire process. I can only imagine. I know that these days I wake up to Facebook and I see, just lots of friends and community members that are getting vaccinated. And I'm super happy to see that. Whereas, 3-4 weeks ago, there was almost, very little of that happening. And it almost felt like when someone did share that there was a little bit of a kind of nervousness around sharing because other people were waiting, right? And it was very uncomfortable. But I think you're right, June. Okay, so the final section before connecting with us, of course, is the resources section of the toolkit. And we're continuing to grow this as well. But these are the websites that are really helpful in locating vaccination sites. There are two, the additional ones, in addition to the myturn.ca.gov website. The first one is a vaccinate.ca.org, the COVID-19 Vaccinate CA website. It's a great website to help you see kind of everywhere that is literally giving out shots in a community. This is a volunteer-run effort. They're doing amazing work, though, calling all of these sites and finding out when and how these places have vaccines. So that's one way that you can help. And then the second is Vaccine Finder, and this is actually a national system that is set up collecting the pharmacies and doctors or the physicians' offices that have vaccines as well. So between the two of these and MyTurn, I think you can probably locate something in the area, somewhere that has vaccines available. Now, of course, it's kind of a little bit like, can be a little bit like chasing something at first. So I want to keep, everyone really grounded that one day we will be at the point where it won't be stressful, but we're still kind of in that kind of gray area where, there are a lot of people wanting vaccination, and there's a combination of not enough vaccine maybe, or also too many, maybe different ways to navigate. So these tools and some patience and persistence can go a long way toward success. And then another new thing that we have to report is that IHSS recipients now, the state of California, the Department of Social Services has said that IHSS recipients can receive up to 4 hours of additional pay, 2 hours per appointment, per consumer, to assist people with getting to and from a vaccination appointment. And then, is there anyone here that has any additional resources or things that they've found useful in their work or process in assisting people? Or any other resources in general that they wish that they had more of?
Hey, Russell, June, the one I found is that the Nextdoor app that some people have in their communities has been somewhat helpful in two ways. Helping people who don't have internet access or are unable to access websites for a lot of reasons, to help them get the appointment. Techno nerds helping take no have nots.
Yep.
To get through the system. And the other is they've organized that way. And the other is in some communities, they've organized to actually help people take people to and from the vaccine sites. So a lot of volunteer, informal help networks going on that are kind of nice to see in some communities.
Yeah, thanks, June. That's great. I think that we all kind of hopefully are in the mindset of doing a lot of what June was talking about. Some communities, they call this mutual aid networks, right? Where perhaps people in your community, or maybe even you yourself, have some capacity to help maybe transport people to and from vaccination appointments. So if you're in that position, I'd recommend that maybe you ring up your local independent living center. And again, finding an independent living center, there's a tool in the toolkit to help you identify where your nearest independent living center is. You can call them up and say, hey, I'd like to provide rides for, I'm available at these times. Can I help? And maybe they can, together you all can create a system where you are providing that much needed solution during that time. Or maybe instead of rides, you can say, I can volunteer to do, to help the tech, maybe deprived, or people who are in kind of a situation where they may not have a device, but you can help them navigate. And I can tell you that most independent living centers are in real need of people to help fill in those roles. So those are great. I think that mutual aid is such an important thing, and it's something that's gotten us through the pandemic thus far. So I would encourage folks to volunteer. That's a great idea. Also, Angie shared, I heard 211 was helpful as well. So 211 is kind of the layer of government assistance at the local level, right? So that is a great resource. It's a good idea to call 211 for people who have, maybe limited experience with navigating other things. I would just say though that 211, of course, they're also learning how to help folks navigate these processes. So I'm assuming that 211 systems vary from place to place, and some of the experience might be easier than others. But that's a great resource as well, and I think I'll put that in to the toolkit as an option as well. What about for others? Have you seen any kind of resources that have popped up in your community during this time that you feel you wish there were more of, or something maybe missing? I'm curious, is anyone on this call connected to organizations that help people in communities that are of limited English proficiency, or non-English speaking communities? I think that's another area that we could really try to do more and find more ways to connect. And I encourage maybe those of you especially in larger metropolitan areas, to find organizations that are doing community assistance. And because the important thing to understand is that the disability community is present in every community, especially those who are non-English speaking may not know how to help people that have barriers to access that beyond just the language barriers. All right. And then finally, we have a section on staying up to date with us. I'll share this here. These are the good ways to stay connected with the DO network. You can always send us an email. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And you can also subscribe to our mailing list. And again, I'll be sending out the slideshow at the end of this call. And I realized that we went a little bit faster than I expected, but I'll open it up again and allow for any other additional questions, and we can have any kind of discussion around the entire process. I know that it's still a little muddy, but hopefully it's becoming clearer every day. I think that the thing to understand is that there is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. Our leadership at the federal level has certainly said that vaccine access is going to get better, and there's commitment to make it much better in a relatively short period of time. So I think a little bit of patience and a lot of persistence is going to be what gets our communities through this. And we've already seen that people with disabilities excel in adapting and making unique solutions. And what we do for our communities makes it better for everyone. So is there any additional feedback or questions, anything that's really looming over anyone that they haven't found a solution to?
Russell, I had one more question. This is June Kales. You talked about our representatives on the stakeholder group at the state level, but I still feel that's vague into how we impact the website directly. Is it OES? Who's the person to contact? What exactly, where is the choke point or the pressure point or whatever?
I do think, June, the oversight responsibility of the My Turn website is shared, right? But the California Department of Public Health is the responsible entity to a major degree on this. So again, California Department of Public Health, when you look on their website, there is a whole section on COVID-19. I would go to that spot and again, show up at those vaccine advisory committee meetings. They can be long, but they are really good visible places to say, this is a huge problem with this website. And there are a lot of problems with the website. It's not.
So we don't get to talk at those meetings. We get to participate in a separate chat area or submit questions that get maybe looked at the next meeting. So it's very frustrating.
I'd say, again, if we organize together too and push a unified message. The My Turn website, we know, was rushed in a lot of ways. It was put out without a lot of the usual kind of groundwork that usually happens. So I think having that discussion about, the state could really find itself in a pretty bad position if it continues to be inaccessible. But I think that, if we together, the Disaster Coalition, want to draft a letter with the outline of all of the points where we've seen failure too, that would probably be a very strong, as an individual though, it may feel very disempowering to be in those spaces. I would recommend though that you look at the CDPH website and email the input address that they've listed there. At least you've got documentation that you've submitted some comments. And Cal OES, I think also, might be a little bit more responsive, but I'm just not sure. I don't believe that they have direct impact over the My Turn website. And I'm seeing some comments in chat about about masks. And I see that there's already some good advice on a product that may work well. So let's see, hold on, I've got to enlarge my window here. Neil asked, what suggestions do you have for people who can't wear masks? And it said, Shelley said, I'm claustrophobic. I had to find an alternative. The best mask I found was from SA Fishing Face Shields. So there are a variety of solutions there. And I'm curious, for those who have had to wear alternative masks, are face shields something that does work too? All right, well, I appreciate all of you being here today. I've got a short poll to share with all of you. This will be part of
Russell, may I?
Yeah.
This is Shelley from Resources for Independence. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was trying to get your attention, but I didn't realize I was on mute. I wanted to just throw in there with the masks that I had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I think that we should all look at because they are very stationary. They keep the microorganisms away from your face. They protect you by sunscreen, sweat, all of that. So I find that it's a lot easier to pull it up than to have something completely strapped around my face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy, convenient, and you can wear it like 15 different ways on top of it. They've been very good purchase for me as an emergency operations coordinator out in the field when working in the gunk, the muck, and all that.
That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing a product that folks may find very useful. All right, I'm going to open up the poll that we're going to have here at the conclusion of our call. I appreciate you all attending today and giving some really engaging feedback, and look forward to engaging with all of you. Please, on this particular topic, just know that we are available to discuss with you via email. The Do Network also has weekly COVID-19 organizing spaces. So we're always looking at shifting and changing aspects of serving people and helping people during the pandemic, creating resources and new solutions. Also, I'll note that there is also a video that we put out last year on kind of DIY mask solutions that work for people that use assistive technology, especially those that use respirators and other devices. So I can share that. I'll share that out with the follow-up email that I'll be sending after we conclude our call. It's a video on kind of how to DIY make a face covering that would work with those devices. And I'm really actually very, very encouraged to hear that people are still thinking about face coverings and access in that way. I think even though we're having conversations about vaccination, that those things are going to be very important going forward. I'll leave our poll open for about another 2 minutes. If you don't mind just taking a moment to respond, I'd appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your energy today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling, and I will share the results with you. Okay, number 1, please rate how helpful this month's status update and briefing call was for you. For people, 57% said very helpful, somewhat helpful, 43%. And then number 2, please rate your opportunity to participate in the coalition discussion. 57% said great, 43% said okay. And then finally, how likely are you to attend a future disaster strategies coalition meeting? Very likely was the far and away 86%, and somewhat likely was a 14%. So again, I'll share these results. And thank you everyone for being with us on a Thursday morning. I hope that you all have a great rest of your week. And I look forward to seeing you again next month, the 4th Thursday of the month from 10:30 to 11:30. Thank you.